The Crystal Palace trembled as another suitor stormed away from Princess Zara's throne room. Queen Elena Martinez watched from the diplomatic viewing chamber, her fingers drumming against the transparent aluminum barrier. This was the 15th rejection today, and the Altaran princess hadn't even lifted her eyes from the holographic star charts floating above her crystalline seat. "Your Majesty," whispered Ambassador Collins beside her, "perhaps we should suggest postponing the selection ceremony. The princess seems particularly uninterested today." Elena shook her head, her dark hair catching the ethereal blue light of the alien architecture. "No, Danielle. Something tells me we need to stay. This is more than simple disinterest." Below them, the Altaran throne room buzzed with activity. Representatives from 12 different star systems had gathered for Princess Zara's mate selection ceremony, a tradition that would determine the future leadership of the Altaran Empire. Each suitor brought gifts worth entire planets, military alliances that could shift galactic power, and genetic compatibility reports that promised strong offspring, yet Princess Zara dismissed them all with barely a glance. The Thraxian ambassador entered next, his 6 arms carrying ceremonial weapons forged from neutron star metal. His scaled hide gleamed with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in complex mathematical sequences, a display meant to showcase his species' advanced intellect. "Princess Zara," he announced in perfectly translated galactic standard, "the Thraxian Collective offers you dominion over 17 star systems and access to our quantum weapon technology. Our species has eliminated disease, aging, and conflict. Together, we could create an empire spanning 3 galactic arms." Princess Zara finally looked up from her star charts. Her silver skin shimmered like liquid mercury, and her 4 arms moved with fluid grace as she gestured dismissively. "Your collective has eliminated passion, creativity, and individual thought. I require a mate who can surprise me, not calculate my every response." The Thraxian's patterns flickered with confusion before he departed, his heavy footsteps echoing through the vast chamber. Queen Elena leaned forward, intrigued. She's not looking for political advancement or genetic optimization. She wants something else entirely. Ambassador Collins adjusted his translation device. The report suggests she's rejected over 300 suitors across 6 months. Her parents are growing concerned about succession. "Look at her body language," Elena observed. "She's searching for something specific. Each rejection becomes more definitive, as if she knows exactly what she doesn't want but hasn't found what she does want." The next suitor approached, a Velkarian energy being who manifested as shifting geometric patterns of pure light. His proposal involved merging consciousness across dimensional barriers and ascending to higher planes of existence. Princess Zara declined before he finished speaking. A crystalline delegate offered to transform her into a living diamond, eternal and unbreakable. She refused. The quantum fish promised to teach her to swim through time itself. She wasn't interested. Elena watched the princess's increasingly agitated movements. Each rejection seemed to frustrate her more than the last, as if she were waiting for something that might never arrive. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Collins said quietly, "the Altaran Queen has requested a private audience. She's concerned about her daughter's behavior." Elena nodded, but her attention remained fixed on Princess Zara. The alien princess stood suddenly, her forearms spread wide in what Elena recognized as a gesture of extreme frustration among Altarans. "These suitors offer me everything except what I truly seek," Princess Zara declared to the assembled diplomatic corps. "They promise power, knowledge, immortality, and transformation, but none of them understand what it means to earn something through struggle, to grow stronger through facing impossible odds, to find beauty in imperfection." Queen Elena's breath caught in her throat. Those words sounded remarkably similar to human philosophy. "She's describing human values," Elena whispered to Collins. "Resilience, growth through adversity, finding strength in vulnerability." The Altaran Queen materialized beside her daughter's throne, her own silver skin radiating concern. "Daughter, you must choose someone. The succession laws require—" "I know what the laws require, Mother," Princess Zara interrupted. "But I also know what my heart requires. These suitors represent species that have transcended their origins, eliminated their struggles, perfected their existence. I want a mate whose species still fights, still dreams, still believes impossible things can become possible." Elena felt her pulse quicken. Collins, do you think she's ever encountered humans before? Not according to our diplomatic records, he replied. First contact was only established 2 years ago, and human representatives haven't been invited to selection ceremonies. Princess Zara continued addressing the crowd. I seek a partner from a species that looks at the vast, dangerous universe and says, we belong here too. A species that builds starships from scrap metal and dreams of touching distant stars. A species that refuses to accept limitations. The throne room fell silent. No current suitor fit that description. Queen Elena made a decision that would change everything. She stood and activated her communication device. Princess Zara, her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. May I present Lieutenant Commander Jake Warren of the Human Colonial Fleet. The massive doors opened, and Jake Warren entered wearing his dress uniform, looking remarkably small and fragile compared to the alien dignitaries surrounding him. His brown hair was perfectly neat, his posture confident despite being outnumbered by beings who could destroy him with a thought. Princess Zara's 4 eyes focused intently on the human male walking steadily toward her throne. For the first time in months, she looked truly interested. Jake stopped at the appropriate distance and performed a crisp military salute. Your Highness, I bring greetings from Earth and humanity's newest colony worlds. Princess Zara descended from her throne, her silver skin beginning to glow with excitement. Tell me, human Jake Warren, what do you offer that these others do not? Jake smiled confidently. Honestly, Your Highness, probably nothing they'd consider valuable. We don't have quantum weapons, dimensional technology, or collective consciousness. We're still figuring out faster-than-light travel, and our longest-lived colonies are barely 50 years old. Continue, Princess Zara said, stepping closer. What we do have is stubborn determination to survive against impossible odds, an annoying habit of questioning authority, and enough curiosity to explore places that sensible species avoid. Princess Zara's glow intensified. Show me! Jake reached into his jacket and produced a small, battered metal sphere. This is a piece of hull plating from humanity's first interstellar ship. It was built in Earth orbit using materials mined from asteroids, powered by experimental engines that had a 60% chance of exploding, and crewed by volunteers who knew they might never return home. The princess took the metal fragment, examining its scarred surface. It survived. Barely, Jake admitted. But that ship opened the path for everything that followed. Every human colony, every scientific breakthrough, every alliance we've formed started with people willing to risk everything for the chance to see what lay beyond the next star. Princess Zara looked directly into Jake's eyes, and Queen Elena could see the exact moment when the alien princess made her choice. The selection ceremony had found its conclusion in the most unexpected way possible. The Altaran Royal Council erupted in chaos as Princess Zara announced her decision. Queen Elena watched from her diplomatic booth as 12 different alien species simultaneously protested the selection of a human mate. Their translator struggled to keep up with the overlapping arguments, creating a cacophony of electronic voices. This is unprecedented, shrieked the Thraxian ambassador, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in rapid distress signals. Humans have no significant technology, no established empire, no genetic advantages to offer the Altaran bloodline. The crystalline delegate resonated at frequencies that made the palace walls hum ominously. Their species has existed in space for less than 2 centuries. They are children playing with forces they barely comprehend. Princess Zara stood beside Jake Warren on the throne platform, her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of absolute determination. My choice is made, and it is final. Queen Elena felt a mixture of pride and terror as she watched Jake maintain perfect composure despite being surrounded by beings who viewed humans as barely evolved primitives. His military training served him well, but she knew the real test would come in private conversations with the Altaran royal family. Ambassador Collins, she whispered. Contact the colonial fleet immediately. We need our best xenobiologists and cultural experts here within 48 hours. Already done, Your Majesty, Collins replied, his fingers dancing across his communication device. But I have to ask, why did you present Jake? This could destabilize our entire relationship with the Galactic Council. Elena smiled grimly. Because sometimes the universe presents opportunities that are too important to ignore. Princess Zara wasn't looking for a political alliance or genetic enhancement. She was looking for something that represents everything humanity offers to the galaxy. Below them, the Altaran Queen approached her daughter with obvious concern. Her silver skin had dulled to a worried gray, and her movements carried the weight of dynastic responsibility. "Daughter," the Queen said in carefully measured tones, "you understand the implications of this choice. The Altaran Empire requires stability, strength, and proven leadership capabilities." Princess Zara's glow intensified as she placed one of her hands on Jake's shoulder. "Mother, look at the history of every great empire. They all began with species who refused to accept the limitations others placed upon them. The humans may be young, but they possess something our traditional allies have lost."
"And what is that?"
demanded the Altaran Queen. Jake stepped forward before Princess Zara could answer. "Your Majesty, if I may speak freely?" The Queen gestured for him to continue, though her expression remained skeptical. "We have hunger," Jake said simply. "Not for conquest or domination, but for discovery, for growth, for the chance to prove that even the smallest species can contribute something meaningful to the galaxy." The Valkyrian energy being shifted its geometric patterns into what Elena recognized as a configuration of contempt. "Hunger is a primitive drive. Evolved species transcend such base motivations. With respect," Jake replied, "transcending hunger means you've also transcended the drive to achieve the impossible. When humanity discovered faster-than-light travel was theoretically possible, our scientists didn't calculate the odds and decide it was too risky. They built the engines anyway and learned from every explosion until they got it right." Princess Zara nodded approvingly. "This is exactly what I mean. Jake's species looks at the unknown and sees opportunity rather than obstacles." The quantum fish spokesperson materialized in a swirl of temporal distortion. "Princess, you could have immortality, cosmic awareness, and power beyond imagination. Instead, you choose a mate whose species will be extinct within 10,000 years. Perhaps," Princess Zara acknowledged. "But in those 10,000 years, humanity will accomplish things that a mortal species spend eternity avoiding. They will take risks, make discoveries, and push boundaries that others consider absolute." Queen Elena felt a surge of diplomatic satisfaction. Princess Zara understood humanity's unique position in the galaxy better than most humans did. The Altaran Queen studied Jake with new interest. "Human, what would you bring to our empire beyond this philosophical uniqueness?" Jake straightened his shoulders. "Your Majesty, humanity offers something no other species has provided, genuine partnership rather than assimilation. We don't want to become Altaran, and we don't expect Princess Zara to become human. We want to build something entirely new." "Explain," the Queen commanded. "Every alliance in your current empire involves one species adopting the culture and technology of another. The result is stability but also stagnation. Humanity proposes maintaining our distinct identity while working toward common goals." The throne room fell silent as the implications sank in. Princess Zara's silver skin began pulsing with excitement. A truly collaborative empire where different approaches to problems create better solutions, where human creativity combines with Altaran wisdom, where our established infrastructure supports their exploration initiatives. The crystalline delegate's harmonic resonance shifted to a frequency of worry. This could destabilize the entire galactic order. Hybrid governments are historically unstable. Only when one culture tries to dominate the other, Jake countered. Humanity has extensive experience with multicultural cooperation. Our home planet contains hundreds of different cultural groups that maintain their unique identities while working together. Queen Elena recognized the strategic brilliance of Jake's approach. He wasn't trying to impress the aliens with human superiority. Instead, he was positioning humanity as the ideal partner species, capable of cooperation without assimilation. The Altaran Queen circled Jake slowly, evaluating him from every angle. "You speak of cooperation, but what happens when human ambition conflicts with Altaran stability?" "Then we negotiate," Jake replied without hesitation. "Conflict isn't something to be avoided at all costs. It's information about how to build better compromises." Princess Zara stepped closer to Jake, her forearms moving in what Elena recognized as protective positioning. "Mother, He understands that differences create strength rather than weakness. The Thraxian ambassador's patterns flashed in extreme agitation. Princess, your offspring will be genetically incompatible with pure Altaran lineages. You risk ending your family's bloodline. No, Princess Zara said firmly. I risk creating something unprecedented and wonderful. Human Altaran children will inherit both species' strengths. Jake looked surprised. Your Highness, I should mention that human-alien reproduction usually requires significant medical intervention. Princess Zara's glow became almost blinding with enthusiasm, which means our children will be born through deliberate choice and careful planning rather than accident. Every child will represent a conscious decision to bridge two worlds. Queen Elena felt her diplomatic instincts screaming warnings. This conversation had moved far beyond simple mate selection into territory that could reshape galactic politics. The Altaran Queen seemed to reach a similar conclusion. Guards, clear the throne room. This discussion will continue in private council. As the various alien ambassadors reluctantly departed, Elena caught Jake's eye and nodded approvingly. He had navigated the first challenge successfully, but the real test was about to begin. The future of human-alien relations might well depend on one military officer's ability to convince an ancient empire that youth and inexperience could be valuable assets rather than dangerous liabilities. The private council chamber deep within the Altaran Palace felt like the inside of a crystal geode, with walls that pulsed in rhythm with the speaker's emotions. Queen Elena sat beside Ambassador Collins at a curved table that seemed to grow from the floor itself, while Princess Zara and Jake occupied seats of honor near the Altaran Queen's elevated position. Let us speak plainly, the Altaran Queen began, her skin a neutral silver that revealed nothing of her thoughts. Princess Zara's choice affects more than succession. The Altaran Empire spans 47 star systems and maintains peace through carefully balanced alliances. A human mate introduces unpredictable variables. Jake leaned forward respectfully. Your Majesty, unpredictability can be an asset when managed properly. Humanity's greatest achievements have come from unexpected approaches to established problems. Give me specific examples, the Queen demanded. When we first encountered the crystalline consortium, every other species had tried to establish communications through mathematic progressions or harmonic frequencies. Humans sent them music, specifically our most chaotic and emotional compositions. The crystallines were fascinated by the mathematical patterns underlying seemingly random artistic expression. Princess Zara's skin brightened with interest. You succeeded where logical approaches failed by embracing controlled chaos. Exactly, Jake confirmed. Similarly, when the Valkyrian energy beings offered to share their dimensional manipulation technology, other species tried to understand the theoretical framework first. Humans built test devices and learned through experimentation. Ambassador Collins added carefully. The results led to more practical applications in 6 months than purely theoretical study had achieved in 6 years. The Altaran Queen's skin shifted to a pale blue, indicating cautious consideration. These examples suggest humans value practical results over comprehensive understanding. We value both, Jake corrected gently, but we're willing to act on incomplete information when the potential benefits justify the risks. That's how we've achieved interstellar travel despite being one of the galaxy's youngest spacefaring species. Queen Elena watched the interplay between Jake and Princess Zara, noting how their body language had synchronized during the conversation. Despite their physical differences, they communicated with an ease that suggested genuine compatibility. Princess, the Altaran Queen addressed her daughter directly, explain to me how a union with this human serves our empire's interests. Princess Zara stood and began pacing, her forearms weaving complex patterns as she spoke. Mother, our empire is ancient and powerful, but it has become predictable. Our enemies know exactly how we will respond to any given situation. Our allies take our support for granted because our reactions never vary. Stability has preserved our civilization for 12,000 years, the Queen reminded her. Yes, but at what cost? Princess Zara's glow intensified with passion. When did we last make a significant scientific breakthrough? When did we last explore beyond our established borders? When did we last surprise anyone, including ourselves? Jake remained silent, wisely allowing the princess to make her own arguments to her mother. The humans offer us something invaluable, the ability to be unpredictable again, Princess Zara continued. Not chaotic or reckless, but genuinely innovative in ways our enemies cannot anticipate. The Altaran Queen's skin cycled through several colors before settling on deep purple, indicating serious contemplation. You propose using human unpredictability as a strategic advantage. I propose embracing it as a natural evolution of our empire, Princess Zara corrected. Every successful civilization reaches a point where continued growth requires incorporating new perspectives. Queen Elena decided to contribute to the discussion. Your Majesty, if I may offer a diplomatic perspective? The Altaran Queen gestured for her to continue. The Galactic Council has been watching humanity's rapid development with considerable interest. Several major species are already planning their own human alliance initiatives. By establishing the first formal human-alien royal union, the Altaran Empire positions itself at the forefront of galactic evolution. Or at the center of a diplomatic catastrophe, the Queen observed dryly. The risk exists, Elena acknowledged, but consider the alternative, watching from the sidelines while other empires integrate human innovation into their power structures. Jake spoke up quietly. Your Majesty, humanity doesn't seek to dominate or replace established order. We want to contribute our unique strengths while learning from species with millennia of experience. And what happens when human curiosity leads you into dangerous territory? The Queen asked. What happens when your species' tendency toward risk-taking threatens established peace? Then we adapt, Jake replied simply. Humans excel at damage control and crisis management. We've survived planetary wars, environmental collapse, and resource depletion by finding solutions others considered impossible. Princess Zara moved to stand beside Jake, her hand resting on his shoulder. Mother, the universe is changing whether we participate or not. New species emerge, old alliances shift, and technological development accelerates. We can choose to guide these changes or be swept along by them. The Altaran Queen studied the pair for several long moments, her skin cycling through colors Elena couldn't interpret. There is another consideration, the Queen said finally. The selection ceremony is broadcast throughout the Empire. Billions of Altarans watched their princess choose a human over genetically superior alternatives. They will expect justification. Then give them a demonstration, Jake suggested boldly. Allow me to prove human value through action rather than words. What do you propose? The Queen asked with obvious skepticism. Jake looked at Princess Zara, who nodded encouragingly. Your Majesty has mentioned threats to imperial stability. Assign me to address one of these problems using human methods. If I succeed, the Empire sees evidence of human contribution. If I fail, Princess Zara can claim temporary insanity and choose a more traditional mate. The throne room fell silent except for the subtle harmonics of the crystal walls. Princess Zara's glow became almost blinding. Jake, you would risk our entire future on a single demonstration? Your Highness, humans have always advanced by proving ourselves through action. Words are just the beginning of any real partnership. The Altaran Queen's skin shifted to deep gold, indicating what Elena recognized as surprised approval. Very well, human Jake Warren. You will have your opportunity to demonstrate human value to the Altaran Empire. Elena! Felt a mixture of pride and terror as Jake nodded confidently. He had just volunteered to stake the future of human-alien relations on his personal performance. The real test was about to begin. The emergency briefing room buzzed with tension as Admiral Pierce's holographic image materialized above the conference table. Queen Elena, Jake, Princess Zara, and the Altaran Queen occupied seats around the circular platform while data streams painted the walls with tactical information. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, Admiral Pierce reported grimly. The Nexus Station rebellion has spread to 3 additional systems. Traditional Altaran peacekeeping forces are stalemated, and diplomatic solutions have been rejected by rebel leadership. Princess Zara's skin darkened to worried gray as she studied the tactical displays. Mother, this is exactly the kind of crisis that demonstrates our empire's predictability weakness. The rebels anticipated every move our forces made. Jake examined the streaming data with military precision. Admiral, what exactly triggered the rebellion? Resource allocation disputes, Admiral Pierce replied. The Nexus Station Coalition claims the Altaran Empire has been systematically favoring core worlds over frontier territories for 3 centuries. The Altaran Queen's skin flashed irritated orange. Their claims are absurd. Frontier territories receive protection, infrastructure support, and trade guarantees worth billions of credits. With respect, Your Majesty, Jake said carefully, the rebels might view those benefits differently. From their perspective, they provide raw materials and strategic positioning while receiving processed goods and services at premium prices. Elena watched Jake analyze the situation with growing admiration. He wasn't simply reviewing military tactics, he was examining the underlying motivations driving the conflict. "Human Warren," the Altaran Queen commanded, "explain your assessment." Jake stood and gestured toward the tactical displays. "Your Majesty, this isn't really a military rebellion. It's a business dispute that escalated beyond control." Princess Zara leaned forward with interest. "Continue." "Look at the pattern of rebel demands," Jake said, highlighting specific data streams. "They're not asking for independence or territorial expansion. They want pricing adjustments, local manufacturing rights, and representation in imperial trade negotiations." Admiral Pierce's image nodded approvingly. "That analysis matches our intelligence reports. But the rebels have rejected every compromise offered by imperial negotiators because they don't trust the negotiation process," Jake concluded. "They believe any agreement will be gradually undermined through bureaucratic manipulation." The Altaran Queen's skin shifted to pale blue contemplation. "You suggest the rebels' grievances have merit?" "I suggest they believe their grievances have merit, which makes them much more dangerous than simple criminals," Jake replied diplomatically. "People fighting for what they consider justice are far more difficult to defeat than people fighting for personal gain." Elena felt proud of Jake's political instincts. He was addressing the root cause rather than just the symptoms. Princess Zara stood and began pacing around the conference table. "Jake, what would a human approach to this crisis look like?" "Direct engagement," Jake answered immediately. "Not through official diplomatic channels, but through person-to-person contact with rebel leadership." Admiral Pierce's expression showed skepticism. "Commander Warren, these rebels have been shooting at Imperial forces for 6 months. Direct contact would be extremely dangerous." "Yes, sir, but it would also be completely unexpected," Jake replied. "Every Imperial response so far has followed standard diplomatic and military protocols. The rebels have prepared for those responses." The Altaran Queen studied Jake intently. "You propose deliberately placing yourself in danger to surprise the rebels? I propose demonstrating that the Empire values resolving this crisis more than maintaining bureaucratic procedures," Jake corrected. "Sometimes the message matters more than the messenger's safety." Princess Zara stopped pacing and looked directly at her mother. "This is exactly what I meant about human unpredictability being strategically valuable. Jake's approach completely bypasses rebel expectations." Elena felt compelled to voice practical concerns. "Jake, direct contact with hostile forces requires extensive preparation. Intelligence gathering, security protocols, communication systems, all of which take time we don't have." Jake interrupted respectfully. "Your Majesty, every day this crisis continues, more systems consider joining the rebellion. Speed matters more than perfect preparation." The Altaran Queen's skin cycled through several colors before settling on determined gold. "Very well. You will have 48 hours to make direct contact with rebel leadership and begin resolution efforts." Admiral Pierce looked alarmed. "Your Majesty, the colonial fleet cannot officially sanction such a high-risk operation." "Then it won't be a colonial fleet operation," Jake replied confidently. "I'll go as Princess Zara's personal representative, operating under Altaran diplomatic immunity." Princess Zara's glow brightened significantly. "Jake, that makes you my direct responsibility. If something happens to you, it reflects on my judgment." "Your Highness, everything about our relationship reflects on your judgment," Jake pointed out with a slight smile. "This is just the first test." Elena admired Jake's confidence, but she also understood the enormous pressure he was placing on himself. Failure wouldn't just end his relationship with Princess Zara, it could damage human-alien relations for decades. The Altaran Queen stood, indicating the briefing was concluded. Human Warren, you have your opportunity to demonstrate human value to our empire. Princess Zara will provide you with appropriate diplomatic credentials and resources. As the group dispersed, Elena caught Jake's attention. Commander, a word in private? They moved to a smaller alcove where the crystal walls provided privacy screening. Jake, you understand what you've committed to? Elena asked seriously. Yes, Your Majesty. I'm betting humanity's future relationship with the Altaran Empire on my ability to resolve a crisis that has stumped their diplomats for 6 months. Elena studied his expression, looking for signs of doubt or fear. And you're confident this direct approach will work? Jake's smile became more genuine. Your Majesty, I'm confident it's the right approach. Success depends on factors I can't control, but the strategy itself represents everything humanity offers to the galaxy. Which is willingness to take personal risks for collective benefits, ability to see problems from unconventional perspectives, and enough stubbornness to keep trying when logical approaches fail. Elena nodded approvingly. Then go prove that humanity deserves a place at the galactic table. As Jake departed to begin his preparations, Elena felt a mixture of pride and terror. One human officer was about to attempt something that could reshape interstellar politics. The stakes couldn't be higher, and failure wasn't an option. The transport ship Stellar Wind dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus station system, its human pilot making minute adjustments to avoid the debris field left behind by months of sporadic combat. Jake Warren stood on the bridge wearing civilian clothes and diplomatic credentials that identified him as Princess Zara's personal envoy, a designation that had never been used before in Altaran history. Commander, said Captain Roberts, the ship's pilot, I'm reading 17 different weapon signatures locked onto our position. The rebels aren't taking chances. Jake activated the ship's communication array. Nexus Station Control. This is Jake Warren, diplomatic representative of Princess Zara of the Altaran Empire. I request permission for direct negotiations with your leadership. Static filled the channel for several long moments before a harsh voice responded. Altaran ship. You will maintain current position while we verify your credentials. Any movement toward our facilities will be considered hostile action. Acknowledged, Nexus Control, Jake replied calmly. I'm prepared to wait. Captain Roberts glanced at Jake with obvious concern. Sir, we're sitting ducks out here. If they decide negotiations are pointless, we won't have much warning before they start shooting. That's exactly why this approach might work, Jake explained. Every previous Imperial contact has been conducted from positions of overwhelming military superiority. We're demonstrating vulnerability as a sign of good faith. Through the bridge viewports, Jake could see Nexus stations sprawling across a cluster of asteroids connected by massive metal frameworks. The station's modular construction spoke of practical engineering rather than aesthetic design, a working facility built by people who prioritized function over form. Commander Warren! The communication channel crackled back to life. You will dock at Bay 7 under direct escort. Any deviation from prescribed approach vectors will result in immediate weapons fire. 3 sleek rebel fighters appeared around the Stellar Wind, their weapon systems clearly visible and obviously armed. Captain Roberts followed their guidance with careful precision, bringing the transport ship into docking range. Jake gathered his minimal equipment, a personal translation device, diplomatic credentials, and a data pad containing economic analysis of the frontier territories. Everything else would depend on his ability to communicate directly with people who considered the Altaran Empire their enemy. The docking bay looked like controlled chaos, with repair crews working on combat-damaged ships while cargo handlers moved supplies with urgent efficiency. Jake noticed immediately that the rebels weren't using standard Imperial equipment. Everything had been modified, rebuilt, or manufactured locally. A delegation of 4 individuals waited at the airlock, their mixed species composition telling Jake more about rebel motivations than hours of intelligence briefings could have revealed. The group included a Nixari with crystalline skin modifications, 2 humans from outer colony worlds, and an Altaran whose silver complexion had been deliberately scarred with cultural markings. I'm Commander Lisa Chen, military coordinator for the Nexus Coalition. You'll submit to security scanning before proceeding further. Jake complied without protest, allowing their equipment to verify he carried no weapons or recording devices. Commander Chen, I appreciate your caution. I'm here to listen rather than to impose imperial solutions. The scarred Altaran stepped forward, his damaged skin creating disturbing light patterns. I am Keth Navar, formerly of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps. I know exactly how Altaran negotiations function, promises made and gradually broken through bureaucratic manipulation. Then you know I'm not following standard diplomatic protocols. Jake replied evenly. Princess Zara sent me here precisely because traditional approaches have failed. Chen gestured for Jake to follow the group deeper into the station. You mentioned listening. What exactly do you think you'll hear that Imperial negotiators haven't already documented? They pass through corridors lined with improvised living quarters and workshop spaces. Jake noticed how efficiently the rebels had converted industrial areas into community spaces, a sign of people planning for long-term independence rather than short-term resistance. I'd like to hear your version of how this conflict started, Jake said as they walked. Not the official reports, but the actual sequence of events from your perspective. The Nexari delegate, whose name Jake learned was Sixer, made a sound like crystal chimes ringing in harmony. Imperial representatives usually begin negotiations by explaining why our grievances are invalid. I'm not an Imperial representative, Jake corrected. I'm a human who's trying to understand how a business dispute escalated into armed rebellion. They entered a conference room that had obviously been converted from a storage bay with jury-rigged communication equipment and furniture built from salvaged materials. The practicality impressed Jake. These people had built a functional government center from whatever was available. Commander Chen activated a holographic display showing trade statistics between the frontier territories and Imperial core worlds. 3 years ago, the Empire implemented new efficiency protocols that effectively doubled transportation costs for our raw materials while reducing prices for finished goods we import. Jake studied the data carefully. The cost increases hit frontier territories disproportionately because you're farther from Imperial manufacturing centers. Exactly, confirmed Kethnaver. When we requested pricing adjustments through official channels, we were told the protocols applied universally and couldn't be modified for special cases. Sixer's chimes took on a discordant tone. Meanwhile, core world territories received infrastructure subsidies that reduced their transportation costs by 30%. Jake began to see the pattern that had triggered rebellion. So frontier territories were effectively subsidizing improvements for core worlds while paying higher costs for the same services. We presented detailed economic analysis through proper diplomatic channels, Commander Chen continued. Every proposal was rejected with explanations about maintaining Imperial economic stability. Let me guess, Jake said grimly. The economic stability was threatened by anything that reduced profits from frontier territory exploitation. The room fell silent for a moment before Kethnavar spoke. Damned situation remarkably quickly for someone who claims not to be an Imperial negotiator. Jake leaned back in his improvised chair. I understand it because humanity has extensive experience with economic arrangements designed to benefit central authorities at the expense of distant territories. We call it colonialism, and it rarely ends peacefully. Commander Chen's expression showed surprise. You're comparing the Altaran Empire to historical human colonial systems? I'm comparing the underlying economic structure, Jake clarified. The specific implementation varies, but the result is always the same. Resource extraction from distant territories to support growth in central regions. Sixer's harmonics shifted to curious tones. How did humanity resolve such conflicts? Jake smiled grimly. Usually through exactly the kind of rebellion you're conducting now. The difference is that we learned from those experiences and built more equitable systems afterward. The rebel leadership exchanged glances that Jake couldn't interpret. Human Warren, Kethnavar said carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Jake activated his datapad and projected his own economic analysis. I'm proposing we solve this problem the way humans would, by redesigning the system instead of arguing about who gets advantages under the current arrangement. The conference room fell completely silent as the rebel leaders absorbed the implications of Jake's statement. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, Jake felt cautiously optimistic about resolving the crisis. The improvised conference room buzzed with activity as Jake's economic restructuring proposal took shape on the holographic displays. Commander Chen worked alongside Sixer to model trade scenarios while Keth Navarre provided insights into imperial bureaucratic processes that could support or hinder implementation. The beauty of this approach, Jake explained as he manipulated data streams, is that it doesn't require the Empire to admit wrongdoing, or the frontier territories to abandon their grievances. Instead, it creates new opportunities that benefit everyone. Sixer's crystalline chimes rang with excitement. Regional manufacturing centers would reduce transportation costs while creating local employment opportunities. Frontier territories become economic partners rather than resource extraction sites. Commander Chen studied the projected profit margins carefully. The Empire's core worlds maintain their advantages while frontier territories achieve economic independence. Neither side has to sacrifice existing benefits. Jake nodded approvingly. Exactly. Humans learned that sustainable solutions require all parties to gain something valuable, not just redistribute existing resources. Keth Navarre's scarred skin patterns flickered with cautious hope. This proposal addresses the root causes of our rebellion, but implementation requires imperial cooperation. The bureaucratic resistance will be enormous. That's where Princess Zara's influence becomes crucial, Jake acknowledged. She understands that the Empire's long-term stability depends on adapting to changing conditions rather than maintaining rigid traditional structures. The conference room door opened to admit a new arrival, a tall, imposing figure whose species Jake didn't recognize. The alien's multiple arms and iridescent skin suggested extensive genetic modification or possibly artificial enhancement. Commander Warren, the newcomer announced in perfectly modulated galactic standard. I am General Thane, Supreme Military Commander of the Nexus Coalition. I understand you've been making promises about Imperial policy changes. Jake stood respectfully, recognizing the careful phrasing designed to test his diplomatic skills. General Thane, I've been working with your colleagues to develop proposals that address the underlying issues driving this conflict. Proposals are meaningless without enforcement mechanisms, General Thane replied bluntly. The Empire has a long history of promising reforms that disappear once immediate crises are resolved. Commander Chen activated the holographic displays showing Jake's economic models. General, the humans' approach doesn't rely on imperial good faith. It creates self-sustaining structures that benefit all parties. General Thane examined the data with obvious military precision. These regional manufacturing centers would require significant initial investment. Who provides the capital for construction? Jake had anticipated this question. Joint venture partnerships between Imperial core worlds and frontier territories. The Empire provides advanced manufacturing technology. Frontier regions provide raw materials and labor. Profits are shared proportionally. And if the Empire later decides to withdraw their technology? General Thane pressed. Technology transfer agreements include permanent licensing and local training programs, Jake replied confidently. After 5 years, frontier territories own their manufacturing capabilities completely. Sixer's harmonics shifted to impressed tones. This human has considered long-term independence rather than short-term appeasement. General Thane circled the conference table slowly, his multiple arms moving in patterns Jake interpreted as deep contemplation. Commander Warren, your proposal requires the Altaran Empire to sacrifice control over frontier territory development. Why would they accept such terms? Jake activated a new set of projections showing Imperial economic benefits, because maintaining control through force is becoming increasingly expensive, while voluntary cooperation generates higher profits with lower security costs. The displays showed comparative analysis between current military expenditures and projected economic returns from voluntary partnerships. Keth Navarre studied the data with professional interest. The Imperial Treasury has been funding increasingly expensive peacekeeping operations across 17 systems. Converting those costs into investment capital would strengthen the Empire while reducing political tensions. More importantly, Jake added, it positions the Altaran Empire as a progressive force that adapts to changing galactic conditions, rather than a rigid authority that suppresses inevitable evolution. General Thane's skin patterns shifted to what Jake hoped indicated approval. You speak as if galactic conditions are changing rapidly. They are, Jake confirmed. Humanity represents just one example of new species achieving technological advancement faster than traditional empires can accommodate. The choice is between voluntary adaptation and forced evolution. Commander Chen looked up from her tactical analyses. General, the humans' approach offers us everything we've been fighting for without requiring continued military action. It also offers the Empire a face-saving resolution that strengthens their position with other potentially rebellious territories, Kethnaver added. General Thane studied Jake intently for several long moments. Commander Warren, you understand that if these proposals fail to achieve implementation, our rebellion will resume with greater intensity? I understand, Jake replied steadily. I also understand that if they succeed, this conflict becomes a model for resolving similar disputes throughout the galaxy. The general's multiple arms moved in what Jake recognized as a formal decision-making gesture. Very well. The Nexus Coalition will cease hostilities pending Imperial response to your proposals. You have 72 hours to demonstrate that the Altaran Empire can embrace change. Jake felt a mixture of relief and increased pressure. He had successfully ended active combat. But now came the harder challenge of convincing Imperial bureaucracy to abandon centuries of established policy. General, I'll need direct communication with Princess Zara to coordinate Imperial response. Granted, General Thane replied. Commander Chen will provide secure communication facilities. As the rebel leadership began discussing implementation details, Jake activated his personal communication device to contact Princess Zara. The next 72 hours would determine whether human diplomatic innovation could reshape galactic politics or whether good intentions would collapse under the weight of institutional resistance. Either way, Jake had proven that humanity could offer unique solutions to problems that traditional approaches couldn't resolve. The crystal communication chamber deep within the Altaran Palace hummed with energy as Princess Zara's image materialized in full holographic detail before Jake on Nexus Station. Her silver skin glowed with intense excitement as she absorbed his preliminary report on the rebel negotiations. Jake, your economic restructuring proposal is brilliant, she declared, her forearms weaving complex patterns of approval. You found a solution that serves Imperial interests while addressing legitimate frontier grievances. Jake felt relieved by her enthusiastic response, but he could see worry patterns flickering across her skin. Your Highness, I sense there are complications on your end. The Imperial Council is in emergency session reviewing your actions. Several members are demanding your immediate recall and the implementation of traditional military solutions. Let me guess, Jake said grimly. They view my negotiations as dangerous precedent that encourages rebellion throughout the Empire. Exactly. Councillor Vextamore argues that negotiating with rebels legitimizes armed resistance against Imperial authority. Jake activated his data displays to share detailed analysis with Princess Zara. Your Highness, please show the Council these economic projections. The cost of military suppression across multiple systems would bankrupt the Imperial Treasury within 5 years. Princess Zara studied the financial models with growing alarm. Jake, some of these numbers, if frontier rebellions spread to even half the territories you've identified, the Empire faces economic collapse. Which is exactly why peaceful resolution through economic partnership becomes essential rather than optional, Jake emphasized. Traditional approaches aren't just morally questionable, they're financially unsustainable. The holographic connection flickered as Princess Zara accessed additional data streams. I'm sharing your analysis with Mother immediately. The Imperial Council needs to see these projections before they commit to policies that would destroy the empire they're trying to preserve. Jake watched Princess Zara's skin patterns as she processed the implications of his research. Her emotional responses were becoming increasingly readable to him, a sign of their growing compatibility despite their different species. Your Highness, there's another factor the Council should consider. General Thane mentioned that other young species are achieving rapid technological advancement. The galaxy is changing whether the Empire adapts or not. Princess Zara brightened. That's the argument I've been making to Mother. The choice isn't between change and stability. It's between guiding change and being overwhelmed by it. Commander Chen appeared beside Jake in the Nexus Station communication chamber. Commander Warren, we're receiving reports of Imperial fleet movements toward our position. It appears someone on your side isn't waiting for negotiated settlement. Jake felt his heart sink. Your Highness, can you confirm Imperial military orders? Princess Zara's skin flashed urgent orange. Jake! Admiral Pierce has been ordered to resume standard peacekeeping operations if negotiations aren't concluded within 12 hours. 12 hours isn't enough time to restructure centuries of Imperial policy, Jake protested. I know, Princess Zara replied urgently. I'm fighting for more time, but Counselor Vex Talmor is arguing that extended negotiations encourage other systems to rebel while waiting for favorable terms. Commander Chen's expression hardened. Commander Warren, if Imperial forces resume military action, the Nexus Coalition will have no choice but to respond defensively. Jake found himself caught between opposing forces that both had valid concerns. The Empire needed to demonstrate authority to prevent widespread rebellion, while the frontier territories needed to protect themselves from what they viewed as Imperial aggression. Your Highness, Jake said desperately, what if we don't wait for full Imperial approval? What if we implement a pilot program to demonstrate the concept's effectiveness? Princess Zara's forearms stopped moving as she focused intently on Jake's suggestion. Explain. Select one system, not Nexus Station but a smaller frontier territory, and implement the economic partnership model immediately. Use Imperial emergency powers to authorize a demonstration project. Commander Chen leaned forward with interest. That approach would show concrete results rather than theoretical projections. Princess Zara's skin began cycling through rapid color changes as she calculated possibilities. Jake, Imperial emergency powers can authorize temporary measures, but they require council ratification within 90 days. 90 days would be enough to prove the concept works, Jake replied confidently. Success speaks louder than theoretical arguments. The holographic connection wavered as Princess Zara consulted additional data sources. I'm identifying potential pilot systems now. The Kepler Frontier region has been requesting development assistance for 2 years. Commander Chen nodded approvingly. Kepler region leadership has remained loyal despite significant economic pressures. They would be ideal partners for demonstrating voluntary cooperation. Jake felt cautiously optimistic for the first time since learning about the Imperial fleet movements. Your Highness, can you authorize the pilot project under emergency powers? I can co-authorize with Mother, Princess Zara replied. But implementation requires immediate action before the Imperial Council can intervene. How immediate? Jake asked. Princess Zara's glow intensified to almost blinding levels. We need signed agreements and initial resource transfers within 6 hours, Commander Chen whistled appreciatively. That's incredibly tight timing for interstellar negotiations. Jake grinned confidently. Then it's a good thing humans specialize in achieving impossible deadlines through controlled chaos. Princess Zara's skin pattern shifted to what Jake recognized as amused affection. This is exactly what I meant about human unpredictability being strategically valuable. Your Highness, contact the Kepler region leadership immediately. Commander Chen, can the Nexus Coalition provide technical expertise for rapid implementation? We have manufacturing specialists standing by, Chen confirmed. If the Empire provides advanced technology and capital investment, we can have the first regional production facility operational within 30 days, Princess Zara nodded decisively. I'm initiating emergency authorization procedures now. Jake, you've created an opportunity to revolutionize Imperial policy through practical demonstration rather than political argument. As the communication ended, Jake felt the familiar combination of excitement and terror that came with high-stakes improvisation. In 6 hours, humanity's approach to interstellar diplomacy would either prove its value or fail spectacularly. Either way, the galaxy would never be quite the same. The next 6 hours would reshape the future of human-alien relations and possibly determine whether the Altaran Empire evolved into something unprecedented or collapsed under the weight of its own inflexibility. Jake Warren, one human officer, was about to discover whether good intentions and innovative thinking could overcome centuries of established tradition.